mean-spirited, when I say that, I tend to talk about a movie that is just like really going at it with the violence to a point where it's not entertaining anymore. It's just like gross.
Yeah.
That like again, not to bring up the movie that we shall not name, Blood and Honey, but like that was a word that I used when I described Blood and Honey, because you have this character in that movie that the only character that has any story in that movie, where she was a victim of some kind of paranoia, and somebody was peeping on her and everything like that, and so she's got this trauma, and you're like, well, where's that going to play into the third act? Oh, it plays into it by her just getting her throat cut and then just getting stabbed on camera in her face like 7 or 8 times as the other character runs away. And so when I think mean-spirited, I think it's like you're taking a character whose arc doesn't make any sense for them to die in such a violent way, and it's just gratuitous. It's just like, let's make it as fucked up as possible just because.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel that way with this movie. Like, some of the deaths are quick. There's like a couple strangulations. Of course, you could argue that with the sexual assault things, that is a pretty consistent theme here, but I think that plays into the toxic male, the God complex, the narcissism, I can do whatever I want, nobody can stop me thing. And so I think it has a place.
Yeah, when we talk about mean-spiritedness in horror, because I've accused horror movies of being mean-spirited and sort of caught myself, and I've tried to understand why, because I me and Connor are big Rob Zombie fans, and he's had to deal with that criticism a lot, and I've had to defend him from that criticism a lot. So where does mean-spiritedness stick out as a sour note? And I think, and I'm not talking about Hollow Man, I'm talking about other kinds of movies that do exist for the sake of showing people in pain. Like there's no arc, there's no triumph. And sometimes they do a little switcheroo where you think this character might get even a little bit of hope or some reprieve. And then they're just met with the grimmest possible fate, because that's, some directors out there want to prove how edgy they are. This movie, 2000 was a time that was still dominated by this really like hysterical anti-violence rhetoric and how people talked about horror movies. I mean,
or clean violence, like in horror movies too.
Right. American Psycho, people were saying the exact same thing about American Psycho. Came out the same year. I don't think this is as good or as smart as American Psycho in the way it uses violence, but that's where the landscape was. But the difference is American Psycho has, people have gone back to reevaluate that film, probably because of Christian Bale and because it was based on this acclaimed book, whatever the reason. I don't think Hollow Man has gotten that reappraisal. Like people haven't gone back to really give this movie a second chance, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, so sorry if I'm shitting on a movie that you like, but when I hear mean-spirited, I think of shit like this, like a Serbian film, shit that really I have no desire to watch it again. It just felt, everything about the movie felt mean-spirited to me, and that's what I think of when I think of movies like that. But I can sort of see where people would sort of take that from this time, because I'm looking at the list of films that came out, horror films that came out in 2000, and we're seeing films like Scream 3 and Ginger Snaps, The Cell, Blair Witch 2, Hellraiser Inferno, Dracula 2000, Leprechaun in the Hood. These are all movies that where does the Hollow Man fit with those? I don't think it really does. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's to the film's benefit. I think Cody's right when he says that I think this film was released at a bad time. I think if this had been released maybe the same year as House of a Thousand Corpses, where we sort of saw that turn in violence in mainstream horror, because after House of a Thousand Corpses, you kind of have the opening of the floodgates with the films like Saw, and just that torture porn category comes up. This film is not that, but I think people would find it much less mean-spirited if it came out during that time, as opposed to during a time of very, I hate to say sanitized horror, because Final Destination came out that year too, but I don't know what else to call
Scream
it.
Scream 3 is one of the most sanitized slasher movies that I can think of.
Yes.
And that's not even a criticism. That's just, where horror was.
That's the thing. Yeah, not a criticism.
You also have to remember that Hollow Man came around a time when these classic movie monsters were being remade in very prestigious fashion. I'm talking Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's the most famous example. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And I bet when people saw Paul Verhoeven and Kevin Bacon teaming up to do a new take on the Invisible Man, they did not expect this.